Okay, so now I'm going to watch this through. So this is recording my voice after I've done it all. I'm not speaking while I'm doing it because I tend to get a little bit too much into what I'm doing. So in some of these parts I've sped run through it. So it's me talking over. First I'm installing, making sure that I've got the build essential, because this is on a Raspberry Pi. It usually comes with some of the basics, but you need to make sure that you can have that the CC, the GCC, G++, etc. compiler, and the library, the basic library. So build essential usually contains those. This doesn't download cmake though, so I'll have to do that separately. But for starters, that's this is almost right after I've installed a basic version of Ubuntu. So doing that, and I'm initializing the main branch, because it always gives that error. If you don't do that right away, you'll give that error, or it sometimes doesn't work with some repositories. So I make sure to establish that main is the one I want to start with. And so I had to look that up. Now I am like messing it up because I don't have it right. There we go. Now some of this is pretty basic. But yeah, okay, what am I going to clone first? Looks like I'm going to clone the GitHub. Is it Neovim? Yep, okay, so the Neovim first. Because I do a few other personal repositories that I have on other computers, so I do get some of that stuff too, but this is the actual Neovim from the GitHub. And that was speed run through it because it takes a bit longer than how fast this went through. So again, that's like why I'm doing this after the fact, because I like to speed run through some of these, because people were complaining about it being so long. It would have been about an hour and a half if I hadn't done that. Okay, now first thing I do in Neovim is create the build and the .deps. The .deps creates a dependency. It's what build, if using cmake, it will automatically look for that deps folder and include all of those files that are in there, so that make sure it has all the required. If you have all these dependencies already installed on your computer, then you won't have to do that. You can just use your own repositories. But if you don't have them installed, you want to make sure you have everything installed, and you want to make sure you have everything in that deps. I think that's the easiest way, and it doesn't take too long. Even on a Raspberry Pi, the whole process takes about, I'd say at most 10 minutes to download and compile all of that. Here in a minute I will install Starship, so it actually will tell how long since the last command was entered. So I think that's the next thing I do, is install Starship, so I'll have that like time marker. It tells me how long it took. Then I don't have to run those kind of commands myself. I think that's going to be the next thing I do here, if I remember correctly. I mean, I just did this just a few minutes before. So the curl, I had to look up curl and make sure curl so I can install rust up. So that's what this is doing. That's the whole command. Since this is not on a graphical, I can't look up the website. I have to look up the web on another computer. This is directly, a screen capture from the Raspberry Pi itself. It's not a secure shell to the Raspberry Pi. This is directly from the Raspberry Pi. There's installing all the basics for rust up, for the Rust compiler for cargo and all these other components. I'm going to go to that and set up. I believe that's what I do next. No, that's not what I do next. Okay, what am I doing next? Git clone. Yeah, so this is where I pull like files over from my another computer. Because I already have all of the Rust files, and compiling them, sometimes it works on a Raspberry Pi, sometimes it doesn't, and I've not been able to determine. I think it's like when it overheats, when the Raspberry Pi overheats, it'll just crap out and not continue with. But the basic way would be cargo install and install those from scratch. But here I've already compiled them and put them in a Git repository, personal Git repository. So since for some reason the DNS does not work on the what's it called, on the router, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So I have to get the IP address directly in there. But it's great when it doesn't. I mean, when you don't have to look it up, because then it will resolve to whatever IP address is in the router instead of having to type out the IP address. It's kind of like, when you type in your website, usually type in the actual website by understandable letters, not by the IP address, and that makes it that's what it's doing in a way. You have these DNS and these what are they called? There are servers that serve like I can't remember what it's called, like A pages or something like that. It's like you have a list of what your site is according to your region or whatever. It will go and get that IP address for whatever name you're typing in, and does that in the DNS. That's what the domain name server means. Anyway, so I'm copying all those files, like you see all those in the green, those are all the files I'm going to copy over into this local cargo bin directory. So it's like I got the name wrong, so I have to type it in correctly. It's like, there's no target. Well, I've got to create the correct target. So I type them all in individually because for some reason it didn't work like I expected. Which is, this is troubleshooting. This is like the kind of things you do for troubleshooting, and you go like, why? Okay, it's not gonna copy every file, so I have to put them all in individually. So then it says also, it's like rust up is another. Why did you try to? I want that particular. So I take off the star on the end because it's not going to copy them to every directory. You want it to copy to that directory. And sometimes things just work without you having to type it so specifically, and sometimes it doesn't. So, like knowing that kind of thing, that's the kind of historical thing that people need to have when they're doing troubleshooting. It's like knowing how to figure out what went wrong and why that didn't work. Well, there's a lot of reasons why something doesn't work. I forgot to put the space in there. Put the space in there. There. Okay, now all those Rust files are stored. They're not important for this particular. Tree Sitter is probably the only one that might be important for Neovim, because it looks for an executable, even though the set of files I also bring in later, it builds it the Packer plugin will download and build that directly as well. And here I'm adding the Starship to the end. Again, this is also I can get this. All of this that I'm doing right here is just so I can get that timestamp without having to type like, okay, end time of this. Okay, because you can put times on it, but I've never done that. Not been too hot on doing that. So It's like I like that it came with Starship as a feature for its basic prompt. So I just decided to put that, since I'm going to add it anyways, and I thought, hey, I could teach people to do this and they will get that as well. So now I'm sourcing the bash rc file, the resource file, so it comes automatically. Now it puts a diamond there. Now the next few things I'm doing is trying to download the fonts so it doesn't show a diamond, but then it's not going to work on this setup that I have, because it's directly to the screen and it's not doing a graphical. Even though you see all the colors on the screen, it's not going to do fonts from this direct, whatever, however it's set up. So it's going to skip, because I completely cut that all out, since it was like 10-20 minutes of troubleshooting just to try to get the fonts, and it never works, because that's the prompt. It requires a, well, I'll say a nerd font. It has it well established as being a monospace font that works. So like for Powerline and for Starship and for other prompts that are out there, people tend to use. You just need going back up through my history to get the right, whatever it is. Well, I don't know what I'm going for, what I'm looking for. Oh yeah, that right there. So I'm on the build. I've already done. Now I'm gonna do the same in the build folder instead of that's why I went up, because you go up, you already have the command there, and this part right here, it gave you that message for missing gettext ms merge executable. If you don't know how to read that, you're going like, what went wrong? Well, it's that gettext. So I have to go and install gettext. Of course, I spell it wrong. And it asked for this other, so I decided, because I know that PO, that's the whole reason why you're getting gettext, is so it can read and establish these PO files. I don't know exactly what PO stands for. I think it has something to do with locales. I guess that's the better way to say it. Locales for different languages. So I'm going to install that as well, even though I don't think it's strictly necessary for this particular thing that I'm doing. I don't think it's necessary to build Neovim, but I include it anyways. It's like a lot of these things, it doesn't hurt to have too many. Some it does. Some you can have too many and it'll overlap on things. But a lot of these, like if it begins with lib, it's usually a library for that, for developing with that file, with that would actually building linking files with that. Since I didn't check out the latest version or the latest stable, it's going to build the developer version. Maybe I'll make another video where I show checking out the latest stable version. I haven't noticed in any of my like trials of using Neovim that it shows a huge difference between the latest stable and the developer. I'm sure there's some differences. Like there's some differences between, definitely some differences between 8.2 and 9.0, and then this one, the latest stable version is 9.1. So that's it. Well, I say 9.1, but it's like 0.9.1. And this one says 0.10.0. But there'll probably be lots of iterations of 9 point whatever before they get on to the next 10 dot whatever. And I don't understand all the version controls. I in a way I understand, but it's like so many. It's like usually if you're releasing it, it's like that says master via 3.25.1. Yet if you don't like if you have another, like whatever version controls on, what is this? That 3.2, I think that's the cmake version. I think that's what that version number there is for. So it's like the first number is its stable release. And this is just my take. I don't know that's how they do it. That's just what I think it's for. So 3 would be like this, the stable release version, and 0.25 is like the iteration of patches that are added to 3. And so how they do completely different in well, at least Neovim, they'll do 0.0, 0.8. That was like the one that I started using Neovim, and 0.9 now. 0.9. I don't know if they use a completely different way of determining their version. So I think I'm gonna, let's see, what am I gonna, is this, yeah, so I did the install, sudo ninja install, and so that installs all the files into all the user slash, or in the user directory slash usr slash share or slash usr slash bin. Means it's kind of established globally to every user that uses this computer, instead of just to a local. So yeah, that's loading my personal Neovim settings. I'll put a link. I made a GitHub repository for not just a personal, but an actual GitHub repository that has this Neovim settings in it, so you can take a look at it. I followed the process of somebody else, and I did some modification on it to my own personal use. I mean, most of it follows the other guy's work, but I think that's what most people do. That's why I'm not too terrible about sourcing where I got it from, because he's probably sourced it from somebody else, and he doesn't, as far as I could tell, did not show any sourcing of it, because it's so I mean, each of these, like packer, install, whatever, it's like it shows where they come from, and it shows all the information that comes. So if you go to any of these like these plugin pages, it'll show how to build them and use them. I do that in the process here too. And I'm going to copy all of those items. The first item, the init.lua and the Lua directory and the plugin directory, to the .configs in Vim folder. This is basically why you want to have something like this set up personally, so that you can have the same settings no matter what computer. If you have several computers and you want to be able to use Neovim on all of them, and you want it to be like the same or similar on each of them, this is how you do it. And then when you make any changes on one, you just upload that back to your own personal GitHub Git repository. Not, it doesn't have to be GitHub, but your own Git repository. And then, so this is running Neovim for the first time. It says that Rosepine not loaded. So that the first time, yeah, it creates, it does the packer to install out everything, and it looks like everything loaded, but it didn't. The tree sitter FZF, the fuzzy finder for tree sitter, or is it telescope? Telescope fuzzy finder. Yeah, telescope fuzzy finder. It does not. Is not quite right, so I have to go. I try adding the build like it shows in the setup from the actual repository homepage or repository on GitHub, and it doesn't work. It didn't work for me there, so I had to go and build it personally. And since I've been having all this success with personally running cmake, I decided to just go this. So this is showing you where I'm going. I go to the .local. I mean, I've had to do this a few times, so that's how I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly to go to this site, not to the other site. except I don't type it all directly. I just I look, see what, okay, what file is it? Okay, what directory is it? What directory is it? And then I show, you know, like ls every time, because this is how you troubleshoot. You can go through. So now I'm going to pull up the fuzzy finder, telescope fuzzy finder native. First I go to that one because I think that's what I needed to go. Like, no, that's not what I needed. It's like, no, that's not the one I needed. And eventually I'll get that. Because I load up the README because it'll tell you how to build, and this one doesn't show a build for it. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not the right one. Again, this is all troubleshooting. How you know? It's like, well, I know the README file on the telescope for building. It's like it shows you how to build it because you're building it native. That's the whole point of they won't give a binary. So I figured that out eventually, that this is not the right version, or not the right one I want to get to. So I'll have to skip out of that. But again, this is like all troubleshooting. This is how you troubleshoot. You know that you're looking for something particular. You go, oh yeah, telescopes slash, or telescope, yeah, slash, or dash, telescope dash FZF native. Then when I look up that README file in VI, it's like, oh yes. Because I haven't loaded well, I have installed Neovim, but I don't want it to load again until after I've done this part. So I'm going to copy the build stuff, the cmake build. So that's why it sits here for a while, and it'll just, because I'm copying that cmake lines into a text editor so I can do it the right way, because I don't want to try to come back to this time after time and get it right, because you don't want to mess this up. It'll turn out badly if you try to do it without doing it the right way. So I do that. So I'm just sitting here, copying it over, and it's taking me a little bit. I didn't fast forward through this part because it's just, and it is what it is. Yeah, it's like, for some reason, running this, like it says here, it says run, because this is what this is supposed to do. When Packer loads this, it's supposed to say use blah blah blah, and then it's supposed to do that run. If it's not in there already, it's supposed to run that and cmake, do that whole line, cmake /s /build /cmake. It's these variables that it's loading into cmake. It's like it didn't run when I do it that. For some reason it did not, so it still loads up as an error. So when the first time I run Neovim after loading this Packer plugin, it didn't work. So even then I had to figure out to build it personally, and I had to go to the .local site Packer start. I had to build it myself. So this is building it. It doesn't take very long at all. It's all there. And then whatever this part is doing, it's like, well, that's installing. So it's basically installing whatever binary into that build folder. It's like, isn't it already there? So you already have these libraries there. Why is it? I don't know. So after I've run that, it's like the LSP config failed to install. So something wasn't quite right. So with these, so it did install several of these others, right? So it just didn't install that first one. It didn't install the HTML. It didn't install the emmet. Didn't install the TS server. They get installed later because I put out of it. I loaded again to make sure it's working, and it did load it later. It just didn't load it this first time. So that's another thing. It's like, just because it doesn't work the first time, it's kind of like somebody else showed in their Neovim setup. It's like it's it has to verify that it's there first before it decides that it's actually, or it's like it loads its library and then doesn't quite know where it is, and then it has to go back and now it knows where it is. So there I toggled the, see, like, I'm not going to show all of my key bindings. It's in the folder that I'll post in the description. I'll post like where my own GitHub repository is. You can look up the key bindings I've set. But anyway, that is it. There it goes, going through it again, but that's fine. This is the file. How do you like it?